Now, tonight we will be diving into agri-tourism, and agri-tourism presents a unique opportunity for individuals to combine aspects of tourism and agriculture to provide a number of benefits, which could be financial, educational, and even social benefits, not only to attract tourists, but also local individuals. And tonight, our facilitator, Shauna Brandon, will do just that for you ladies. I must say, the first time I listened to this session, which was with the St. Kitts and Nevis cohort, I was truly fascinated about what the benefits are, what are the ways to look at with agritourism, and was even more intrigued with what was happening right in the Caribbean as it relates to agritourism. So without any further ado, I'm going to invite our facilitator for this evening to take over. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Is this Latoya who is doing the introduction?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you very much, Latoya, for that nice introduction. All right, so my name is, I will just introduce myself a little bit more. My name is Shauna Brandon. I am the Rural Development Specialist at the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, for short IICA or ICA, delegation in Jamaica. I have been working in the area of rural tourism for several years. I've done training courses in rural tourism. I have actually delivered training courses in rural tourism, and I have assisted community groups in the area of rural tourism. So it is a pleasure to be a part of this Helens Daughters Academy session. And I hope this session today will spark your interest a bit and be of use to you. If you can give me a few seconds while I bring up my presentation. Latoya, I'm able to share screen?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thanks. All right, so we are ready to start. Latoya, do you normally do introductions at the beginning of the sessions?
Yes, usually they do.
Yes, so it would be nice if the participants could just briefly introduce themselves so I can know who is in the session, and then we can get off the ground.
Okay, ladies.
Good night. My name is Shafika Andrews.
Good night. My name is Michelle Peters. I do my own backyard gardening.
Good night. My name is LaDonna Lois Williams.
Good night. My name is Joylyn Lampkin, and I am a tropical fruit farmer. Thank you. Bye.
Good night. My name is Janice Glasgow.
Good night. I'm Sharon Allen.
Hi, good night. I am Janelle Brown, and I'm an entrepreneur.
Good evening. My name is Shirla Francis, and I am a retired civil servant.
Good night. My name is Morgan.
Good night. My name is Patrice Bilinji, and I am into agro-processing.
Good night. I'm Natalie Constance. Hi, good night. My name is Ronita Oliver, and I do backyard gardening and aquaculture.
Hi, my name is Alberta Davis.
Good night. I'm Natalie Hobbins.
Good night. I'm Anisha Williams.
Hi, good night. I am Giselle John. I am a farmer, and I actually did some studies through ICA on agritourism.
Is that it? Have we heard all of the introductions? I see someone.
Hi, good night,
Okay.
everyone. I am Joella Roberts. I am from the most northern side of the island called Fancy, and I am a farmer by nature. I grew into it. I met my entire family farming, so it became something natural for me to adapt to. And I am involved in fishing also. Just a teacher by profession. Okay.
Okay, so is that it? Have we had all of the introductions? And I just want to clarify, Latoya, just to make sure, this group, we're in St. Lucia?
St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Okay, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Okay, sorry about that. St. Vincent and the Grenadines. All right, well, again, I'm very happy to meet all of you, even if it's for a brief 2-hour session. Thank you for taking the time to log on to this session. And so I will proceed with the presentation. And it is an introduction to agritourism. And here we have our tourist Fred and our local farmer, Mas Tommy, or Mr. Tommy. Not moving. I'm not sure why okay, sorry. All right, so this is the outline of our presentation today. We will look at what is agritourism, the potential benefits of agritourism linkages, and we look at agritourism from two sides. The first is improving the supply of local agricultural products to the tourism sector. And then the other side is bringing tourism to and how you can use your farm or rural community as a tourism destination. We look at tips on developing and executing your idea, as well as agritourism examples from the Caribbean. So essentially, then, what do we mean when we say agritourism? And so at ECO, this is where I work, we have been promoting linkages between agriculture and tourism because ECO sees agritourism as a promotion of increased linkages between the two sectors. Agriculture really is our core business, but we recognize that tourism is a dominant industry in the Caribbean. The tourism sector therefore provides a significant market opportunities for agriculture and rural sectors. And this can comprise a supply of local products to the tourism sector and or taking tourism into rural areas. And then worldwide, tourism is a massive industry, right? It contributes 10% of GDP and generates 1 in 10 jobs and accounts for 7% of exports globally. So it's not just in the Caribbean that tourism is dominant. Tourism is a big industry worldwide in many other regions of the world. So it's something that we all need to figure out, how we can tap into a little bit more. So for example, there's this quote from the United Nations World Tourism Organization, UNWTO. Today, the business volume of tourism equals or even surpasses that of oil exports, food products, or automobiles. And as you know, as I mentioned earlier, in the Caribbean, it's a dominant industry. And so for several Caribbean countries, tourism earnings account for more than 60% of their GDP. And if you look at the graph, you will see that several of the countries that have the highest tourism dependency, and this is a tourism dependency index, several of the countries that have the higher bar charts, they are within the Caribbean. So you can see them listed at the bottom. I think seen here, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that's at number 15, right? So you're talking about number 15 in terms of tourism dependency. So you're within the top 20, right? Jamaica, where I reside, is just 2 points behind you at number 17. So, the level of tourism dependency really is high compared to other regions of the world. And the unfortunate thing is that although we are so tourism dependent, we also don't maximize our earnings from tourism. And so we have revenue leakages up to 70% in some countries. And what that means is if 70 cents out of the dollar that you earn leaves your country, it does not remain in your country, or in some cases, it didn't even come into your country in the first place. That means you are only retaining 30 cents on the dollar on every tourism dollar that you earn, right? So several countries are retaining a minority of the revenue from tourism, the revenue that is generated from tourism. And so it's on this basis that we feel that greater linkages between agriculture and tourism can increase that retention, increase the amount of money that is retained from tourism. So particularly by allowing more of those funds to trickle into rural communities, to trickle into farmers' pockets, for example. So you have a tourism sector that is dominant worldwide, it's dominant in the Caribbean, it has been increasing by leaps and bounds, but unfortunately, on the flip side, the agriculture sector has not kept pace with the tourism sector. And, these are some of the challenges that we have had, agricultural development in the Caribbean. The sector has been exposed to external shocks, such as hurricanes, reduced commodity prices, increased international competition, dependent on a few main export crops. Several of our countries, we were known for a few plantation crops: sugar, banana, coffee, cocoa. There weren't a lot of diversification when it came to our export crops. Then there is limited access to financial resources to scale and modernize production. And then you have fragmented agricultural stakeholders, right? And then in the midst of this, you have food imports. So even though, we're producing food, we're importing more than we produce. And so we feel that by strengthening linkages between agriculture and tourism, we can have several benefits. You can expand the sale of agricultural commodities. You can diversify farm income, create jobs, particularly for youth and women, foster opportunities to add value to local produce, promote community collaboration and partnership, revalue the rural way of life and build local pride, and ultimately also from the other end, strengthen the tourist offer. Rural tourism or, stronger linkages with agriculture actually deepen or broaden your tourism products. So, offering farm tours, for example, as this picture shows, you know, it extends what you can do in your rural community or your farm location. And so we're going to look at one of the first elements within the nexus between agriculture and tourism, that of increasing the local supply to the tourism market, the local agricultural supply to the tourism market. And as you know, there are several challenges that have been identified why we don't have stronger linkages between the supply of local produce to the tourism. So some of the main challenges is that, you know, you have hotels that complain about inadequate quality and consistency of supply. Post-harvest skills and knowledge is lacking in the region, and that is important to be able to distribute from the farm to the hotel sector. There is, and then apart from the knowledge, the infrastructure, post-harvest infrastructure is also inadequate. So you have inadequate storage, you have inadequate transportation, and sometimes some of the hotels will tell you that it might be easier to bring in a container of food from Miami than to source it from the farmers down the road, you know? And those are some of the things that we need to see how we can fix. And there's a need to incentivize local sourcing through the sensitization of chefs, such as, you know, information exchange. And then we recognize another thing that over time that we have recognized is that agriculture and tourism don't necessarily speak the same language. Tourism expects year-round access to all food items, while several agricultural sectors are seasonal. There are few enlightened hotels who would base their menus on seasonality, but there are others who are not aware and don't necessarily care to. As hotels have gotten larger, increasingly they are part of international chains which have coordinated international supply systems. While on the flip side, agricultural sectors are often fragmented and uncoordinated. And so we need to look at some of the solutions to bridging these gaps, overcoming these hurdles. And we have some of the points here on this screen. Before I get into these points in terms of some of the solutions that we need to look at, has anyone here, I know one or two persons mentioned that they are into farming, even if maybe on a small scale, or if you may know any other farmers who have had, who have attempted or are successfully supplying to the hotel sector. I mean, can you say from this the viewpoint of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, what the situation is? Is there a strong willingness of hotels to purchase from farmers? Anyone want to jump in on that point?
Yes, I know of some hotels who purchase from local farmers. However, because there is a lot, there are a lot of farmers who do not practice good agricultural practices. So there's spoilage of the goods before some of them are being used. So I think they are trying to get away from buying local. Some of them are getting away from buying local produce from us as farmers and import.
So you see the trend is actually going in an unfavorable direction. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, that's unfortunate. That is unfortunate. And do you think they are justified with respect to their complaint the quality of the local produce?
To be honest with you, I think that they can do much better in terms of purchasing from local farmers, they are not reaching out enough to me. That's my opinion. They're not reaching out to the farmers. They just think that it's okay to buy from one set of persons. But there are a lot of farmers who they do not know about, who produce very good crops, and they can purchase from them. But
Okay.
I don't know.
So you don't think there's a strong enough push to get hotels to be aware of who has what to produce for sale?
No, I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
It's
Any
more of who know you.
who know who?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. Okay. Anybody else has a comment on this point? No one else? Okay. All right. Well, I mean, it's important to kind of, I asked the question because you know, every country might have a slightly different take on the issue. And generally, you know, based on my discussions with my colleagues in you know, across the Caribbean, it does seem to be an issue that is a sore point. It's not felt that there is enough local produce, or as you said, enough effort to ensure that local produce is going into the hotels, right? And so this is a point that we flag because, you know, food is something that is universal. The tourists have to eat, you know, normally 3 meals a day. If you can capture part of that market, it goes a very long way towards increasing the revenues that the farmers can make, especially when you consider the small markets within the Caribbean, that's the small local markets, and that, you know, have to flag, and we continue to try and find ways to bridge that gap. And some of the ways that we have looked at is first, as you said, you know, that level of communication, right? It has to start with dialogue. How do we communicate with the hotels to find out their product needs, the quality specifications? How do we inform them so that they fully understand the seasonality of production so that they can schedule planting? How can we sensitize chefs reserving local dishes and according to the seasonality of agricultural produce? And then, of course, there's need for government support, right? We need to lobby governments to explicitly promote and facilitate local sourcing. Sometimes we can't just wait on the benevolence of the hotel sector. Sometimes we have to use a kind of a carrot and stick approach. You know, some kind of, you know, suasion that you know, you have to find a way to not just entice, but to make it that it becomes not mandatory, but almost mandatory to support the local agricultural sector. So some level of coercion may be needed to get hotels on board. And there has to be ways in which we create win-win collaborations. So the hotels actually see the benefit of sourcing local, particularly with the, you know, the increased environmental consciousness these days, looking at food miles, you know, the smaller number of miles that your food has to travel to get to you, you know, the issues of freshness, that, you know, your local food is going to be fresher than the food that you import from abroad and so forth, right? With respect to on-farm, you know, it was raised by Shafika's comment about, you know, the quality of supply. And so, you know, we have to look at planting according to market need, implementing agronomic practices that enhance post-harvest quality, looking at food safety practices, possibly going as far as traceability, experimenting with new crops and new growing systems based on the demands of the hotel sector and the tourists, right? And also looking at how you ensure consistent supply. So you mean that rather than planting a crop at one time, you know, staggering your planting. So you're putting in, you know, your crop week at a time so that you can reap consistently, you know, going forward so that you have a consistent supply to the market. So that is, you know, those are the things, the on-farm issues that we need to look at with respect to meeting the needs of the tourism sector. And then, of course, the issues of post-harvest, you know, to develop greater knowledge and skills to reduce spoilage. Was there a session in this academy looking at post-harvest management? Can anybody answer that? Either Latoya or any of the participants?
Yes, we did have that session.
Okay, okay. Was the information new or pretty much you kind of had an idea, or you thought, you know, this is definitely an area that we do need to bolster in knowledge on?
It was both. It was a bit of both. We knew
Okay.
before and different we knew and we didn't know why. Now we know the reason why.
Okay. Oh.
Storage and all that. We were even given tests to make sure that we understood what we were
Okay.
being taught as well.
Okay. So post-harvest knowledge and skills, it is actually a very, I see someone mentioned in the chat that it was new to you, new to her, but it is a very important area. A lot of times we focus on the agronomic practices, and then when it comes down to how you handle your produce, your crop after you harvest, that is when we fall down, and then that is when we compromise the quality of the produce. So it is very important. And just the whole logistics, as moving on, because supply logistics and post-harvest are related, having the appropriate distribution mechanisms, you know, warehousing, storage, etc. Understanding the hotel receival process, what is required when you need to, at that, you know, back door to the kitchen where they get the produce, you know, what do they look for? What the chefs want, etc. And that continuous feedback loop to dialogue to assess the hotel satisfaction with supply. Why do they want things in a certain way, you know? Because that helps you to work backwards to how you produce to meet that demand. I am open to questions and comments. So if there are anyone, you know, at any point wants to ask a question or make a comment, please feel free to do so. Okay, so now, you know, moving on now to the issue of bringing the tourism, right? Now we're talking about taking the food and the supply to the hotels. Now we're talking about bringing the tourists into our communities, right? So we need to look at, this is a definition, again, from the UNWTO. And just checking, were there any other comments or questions re the prior topic, resupplying food to the hotels? Did anybody else have any questions or comments on that issue? Okay, just want to make sure before I continue. All right, so in the you know, looking now at bringing tourism to rural communities, this is a definition from the UNWTO, and you see it focuses on interaction with rural life, you know, the traditions, the way of life, you know, the landscape, the attractions in the area, and the products that are offered, and how that is packaged for the tourists. And these are some of the various offerings that we can have. Rural heritage. Just yesterday, I was explaining to someone that rural communities have had better, what would I say, cultural and heritage retention. you find that rural areas, more so than urban areas, have a stronger connection to their past. And so, interacting with that heritage is stronger in the rural community. So they do have that advantage when it comes to heritage. And we're looking at things like traditional architecture, churches, villages, etc. What is of historical significance in your rural community. And then you have rural activities, the things that we do in rural areas. So whether it is farming, fishing, riding, cycling, walking, and I'm sure where you are, you may think of other activities that occur in the rural space. And then of course you have just your rural life, your food, your music, your local events, your craft. And then you have now your landscape, your countryside. That's your mountains, your hills, your lakes, your rivers, the scenery, the forests, the nature, for example. And all of these make up the rural tourism community. That is what is on offer, what is potentially on offer to the tourist that comes to your rural community. Can someone give me an idea from, in the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, are there any unique activities that you may find in rural spaces in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Come on, share your culture a bit. Somebody can tell me.
Well, for example, in the Carib communities, I am not from that area, but there are unique cultures there, the food, which was from their ancestors, the language that they still have there, the way, the type of food that they prepare, they still plant cassava, and they do the products from those things. So that's just an example of one that I could think of.
If
Right
need be, I could actually chime in here, even though it's raining and the thunder.
I can't hear it, so that's fine.
Yeah, given that I'm from the Carib community, we do have the food, the traditional dishes that were prepared by our ancestors. We also have models of homes, how they were built long ago. We're just trying to reestablish that aspect of our heritage, our culture. We do have tools and a few other instruments that were actually utilized by our ancestors. In terms of preservation, it is not really a rurally based area, but in Arnesville, I know for certain that there is someone who is trying to keep the culture alive. So within the communities, in the rural areas, there are buildings, those stone buildings that were established by the Europeans. They're there. Tourists do go around and have a look at them. During National Heroes Day, there's a very large promotion of dokona, potato pudding, cassava bread, whatever other traditional goods that were used by our ancestors, they're actually being prepared on that day in several different communities here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm also looking at the chat. I've seen Joylyn, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, mentions hillside farms and old arrowroot mills. I'm interested in understanding a little bit more about both, but particularly arrowroot mills. What did the arrowroot mills do? And someone mentioned mandango.
Yes, that's madongo. That's the starch,
Madango, okay.
arrowroot starch. Yes.
Oh, okay, okay. And so what did you do with it?
Okay, so we use madongo for several different things. One of them, well, traditionally and very well known, is the madongo baked. We do that with sometimes blackfish or even saltfish, codfish.
And that's made from arrowroot.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's also the starch itself, we'd use it to make starch porridge. So as we make cornmeal porridge, we also use the starch to make starch porridge.
Okay.
And even iron clothing.
Okay, right. I know anything that's starchy can be used for starch for ironing. So the arrowroot, is it which of the ground provisions is it closest to? But I'm not sure
It's a rhizome.
Right.
Yeah, it's a rhizome. So it's a root crop. It's similarly looking to more or less ginger in a sense, given that it's a rhizome.
Okay. So people don't necessarily eat it, like reap it and boil it. It's normally maybe crushed or milled into something else.
Pardon me?
No, I'm saying it's not typically boiled and consumed as you would a ground provision, but it's more used kind of like grated or dried or milled and used in another format, like a powder
Yes,
or
it is
flour. Yes.
milled.
Okay, fine.
Yes,
Okay.
it is milled. Yes.
Okay, okay. And I see someone else mentioned cassava. Okay. So these are some of the examples for, thank you for providing, of things that, say, for example, myself, I would not have been familiar with the arrowroot and some of the products that you're mentioning. So it can be of interest to your tourists, and creating a story about these activities, the traditions within these communities and so forth. It's amazing what you can do with things or the traditions that you take for granted that would be of interest to visitors. And so I'm just gonna also look now at how did this concept of rural tourism start? Because for a lot of people, it is a new concept. And so essentially it had its birthplace in Europe. Farmers would rent rooms in their homes, which promoted a coexistence with families and their customs. There was a focus on accommodations and exploring the countryside and small towns. So you see a picture here of a British bread and breakfast, which is, commonly known in England, countryside homes that turn themselves into guest houses, typically called bread and breakfast. And the authorities, the government authorities, actually fostered the development of this activity in Europe because it was seen as a way for farms to diversify their income. So they had options, or there was less dependency on agriculture. Some of the key drivers for the market, the target market, was that desire to connect with heritage and rural lifestyle. It was seen as far more relaxing and beneficial to well-being than the hustle and bustle of the cities that these visitors, they were actually local. They were people from the same country, but they were coming from the cities, right? And this interest in peace and quiet, access to nature, the ability to engage in exercise, walking, cycling, climbing, etc. So those were some of the motivations that drove this initial interest in rural tourism, particularly in Europe. And so this is an example of tea time at a British bread and breakfast. And you would have your visitors staying for a couple of days. And so here, accommodation that, you know, in the case of the UK, it was the English bread and breakfast, is seen as an essential ingredient of the rural tourism equation. Overnight visitors are seen as more valuable. You know, the data shows that overnight visitors, as opposed to visitors who just come for a day trip, they come, they come spend a couple of hours in the community and then leave. You know, it is felt that overnight visitors have higher spending levels than day visitors, typically up to 300% more than day visitors. So the ability to accommodate visitors in your rural space can be very valuable. And it's, you know, it's also, you know, you remember we spoke about that retention of the tourism dollar, that, you know, it can be very low in some countries. When your visitor is staying in your rural community, it is expected that more of that spend will remain within that rural community. And then we move on to the next slide. And this is another example of accommodation in another European country. This is what is known as a French gîte. A gîte typically refers to a vacation home in rural France for rent. And it, you know, you can see that it differs a bit from the British version, but still charming. And so each country has to kind of define its own sense of what that rural accommodation will look like or will bring, you know. And so from where you sit in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you know, think about, you know, what would your accommodation, how reflect the characteristics of your territory, you know? And, you know, so you have your own stamp. You don't necessarily have to copy what occurs in the UK or what occurs in France, but you have your own version, your own, whether mainland St. Vincent or Grenadines version of a rural country home that you offer for persons to stay in. I don't know if any comments on that point. I see someone mentioned something in the chat. I think this is what from our previous discussion. In Bequia, we have traditional whaling. So we had the whaling station crafts made from bone, use of oil, history, etc. Now I have no idea what whaling is. So I don't know if Jan Olivier can explain that to me.
Okay, when I say whaling, Bequia is known for the whaling tradition, in that we do whaling as a means of livelihood. It's a family tradition.
So first of all, what is whaling?
It's actually where we have persons actually catching the whale, catching the humpback whale. So they catch it and they use every part of it. The meat we eat, the oil we drink, the bones, crafts are made from it. Every aspect is used. And this is an old tradition.
And how do they catch these whales?
They use harpoons. They go out in small tradition boats.
And these are big whales?
Yes, they're big whales.
Wow, wow.
They're big whales, and they don't use a big boat, they use the small boats. But this
so how they drag it in? The whale comes in behind the boat?
When they catch it, after it's finished killed, then they would get help from maybe a small trawler or speedboats to help to pull it to the whale station.
Okay. Well, this is quite interesting for someone like me who has never even seen a whale. I suspect that from where you are, seeing whales is relatively common, but that's fascinating for me. I see someone also, but it's like all of a sudden, all of the traditions coming back to people. I'm seeing someone mention blackfish tradition in, I cannot even pronounce the name, because I know if I pronounce it, it will be incorrect. Baroli?
Barely.
Barley. Yes, someone, Alberta, tell me about the Blackfish tradition.
Well, good night. It's similar to what Jan just described with the whale. Men go out in fishing boats and they use harpoons and stuff like that, and they catch these really big blackfish. And they use every part of it, the meat, they melt the skin and it gets dry, and they refer to it as crisp. So it's dry and hard, but it's really delicious. And they use all of the other parts. They use the oil for like if you have a cold and all of these things. So yeah, it's like what Jan described a while ago.
Okay, all right. Well, as I said, these are the types of things that you want to consider when you're thinking of creating rural tourism experiences. Thank you, Ranita, for inviting me to come to St. Vincent and Grenadines and experience all of these traditions. I hope one day to definitely make it to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I have not been as yet, but I do hope to be able to make it. All right, so let us continue. And so, given this birthplace of rural tourism, being in, okay, I've seen some more things being put in the chat. I see someone, is this Elma making a comment for tourists that would be very different. They think we should protect. Also, do you think, and I see the picture, it's a huge, huge whale. Do you think that, say, particularly European tourists that are very environmentally sensitive, you think that they would be turned off by the whale in practice? Is that it?
Not everybody, because I am a tour guide as well.
Okay.
And the people respect our culture.
Okay.
They respect the culture. So not everyone, you might have those here that might feel that way, but they don't. From my interaction with them, I haven't had anybody who,
who frowned on the practice necessarily.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it is not as if the whaling is making the species extinct.
No, it's not.
Okay, fine.
Because there's a quota. We have a quota that you can catch per year, and most of the time you don't reach near the quota.
Okay, well, okay, all right. Okay.
Did we lose connection there?
It seems so because I'm not hearing anything.
Hold a second, ladies. I'm trying to see if I can get in contact with her.
Hello, I'm sorry about that. It seems as if my internet just dropped for a bit a while ago. I am going to bring up back my presentation. I am hoping that, oh, someone was just calling me. Latoya. All right, Latoya, I'm back.
Yes, sorry, that was me.
That's okay. I'm sure you wonder what could have happened. Yes, my internet seemed to have dropped a while ago. I am hoping that it will not occur again. I am going to try. Let me continue with my presentation as quickly as possible so I don't have this problem again. If you just give me a second to bring up back my presentation. Okay, so let me resume. I'm sorry for that break. All right, so as I was about to say, Europe is still the leader and largest global provider of rural tourism. They have an association called Eurogits. This is an image of their website, and it is a European rural tourism umbrella group. And there are 38 organizations from 25 countries in Europe. And it markets and lobbies on behalf of rural tourism operators. So you see the strength of that rural tourism industry in Europe. And it is estimated that rural tourism supports 900,000 direct and indirect jobs in Europe and generates 150 billion euros in gross income each year. And so you're looking at, a sector that can potentially be very lucrative. Different than Europe. There's a concept known as agro-food routes, which is very popular, also in Spanish known as rutas. And these are tourism routes built around a key agricultural product in a region. So what we're looking at here is a map of a wine tourism belt it's a route around wine in the southern Argentina growing region, wine growing region. And it comprises traditional farms, industrial wineries, and even museums of fossil replicas found in the area. So Argentina is actually the largest producer of wine in South America and the 5th largest in the world. And as a result, they have been receiving a growing number of wine-related tourists. And so the wineries have actually hired dedicated staff to, just to manage the tourism related to these wine routes, that they are connected to. They hold musical and arts events. They build restaurants, small hotels on their vineyards. And initially, the thrust was that they saw tourism to increase their brand visibility. However, as it has developed and grown, it has actually become a means to increase wine sales. As a boutique wineries record up to 50% of income from this agri-food route source, these wine routes that they are connected to. And as such, the sales of these wineries have surged as a result of the influx of tourists to the wine growing regions. This is another well-known route This is the Tequila Trail in Mexico. And it is actually recognized as a World Heritage Site. It's a road network that connects around 8 towns around the Tequila volcano, where tequila, you know, tequila is an alcoholic beverage that comes from Mexico. And so it's a plant that from which the alcoholic beverage is produced. And the plant is grown in this region. And as a result, they have developed routes, tourism routes within this region that grows, you know, the crop that produces the tequila alcohol. And so the route has become a cultural and gastronomic destination and venue for tequila-themed festivals and events. According to the Mexican Chamber of the Tequila Industry, you know, thousands of people traverse the tequila route in one of the years that was mentioned, 2019. And they have seen a steady increase in visitors, and which has produced a hotel building boom in the town of Tequila. It's only within the past 10 years that a few of the tequila distilleries began offering tours and tastings. So you're talking about within the space of a decade, this concept of tequila tourism has just mushroomed and is now, you know, a thriving industry separate and apart from, you know, the tequila industry itself, the tourism part of it. So the tequila route comprises tequila culture, crafts, archaeological sites, and tourist spots. Visitors can do the journey by bus, by train, motorcycle even, and walk in sections of the train. The tequila trains, they include tequila tastings, mariachi band performances, and traditional Mexican cuisine. So they have developed this, you know, wide-ranging tourism product just around that what would I call signature product, tequila, because tequila is known worldwide. So, you know, it has a certain brand to it, and they're able to draw tourists to that area as a result. But they have built upon that. They have built upon what tequila is known, and they have added value by, you know, adding other elements related to Mexican culture. Okay, so this is an example. The picture on your right, I think, is an example of a train, one of the tequila trains. And then you will see a map that has, you know, the black line would have the general area of the route, and then the different towns or communities in the area of where the main tequila production occurs. And then we move on to Argentina. It's lesser known if you're outside of Latin America or outside of Argentina, but the Argentinians drink this tea called yerba mate, and they actually sip the tea all day long out of these beautiful mugs. And they have created a route that travelers can visit various sites to learn about the entire yerba mate production process. So yerba mate is a herbal tea. And there, you know, they can go to plantations where the tea is grown and look at the harvest, the drying, the milling, the canning of it, the whole process. You can taste different types of yerba mate, and, you know, discover their energizing properties. And then they have something called the mate ceremony, which apparently is an important part of the Argentina's daily life. So the yerba mate route, you know, it comprises the producers, agro-industries related to yerba mate, restaurants, bars, coffee shops, historical and cultural sites within that area, hotels, cabins, bungalows, hostels, so a range of different types of accommodation for those who want to traverse the route, and of course, transportation services and tourism companies. So again, this is an entire tourism product or an entire tourism service that has been created around a food product. Next on our, these are all within Latin America again, and these are all what we call agri-food routes. It's tourist routes connected to what do I call it? What they refer to as emblematic food items. So in the case of Colombia, it is coffee, right? Colombian coffee is well known, and their coffee route is known as El Eje Cafetero, which translates into English as the coffee axis of Colombia. Again, this is also on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Several of the coffee plantations now offer accommodation. The route offers plantation tours and other attractions and activities such as biking, hiking, visits to nature reserves and waterfalls. There are also festivals and special events, within the coffee growing area at selected times during the year. And so, we have just looked briefly at, rural tourism in Europe and Latin America. And in the Caribbean, we have typically associated tourism with sun, sea, sand. And in other regions of the world, they look at monuments of history, museums, and so forth. But in recent decades, particularly since the 1980s, you are beginning to see new and differentiated tourism products start to emerge. And so the concept of what you can offer to the tourist has expanded considerably. So you have seen strong developments in the area of cultural tourism, sports tourism, nature, adventure, and also rural tourism. And that's what provides the context and the potential to market rural tourism. And so these are some of the tourism trends that have been observed, right? The concept of, when we say travel to change, for that period of time when the visitor is away from their home, they want to kind of live like a local. And there's this quest for authenticity and transformation. And then, the concept of travel to show, we're now living in a social media driven world where people want to get a snapshot of everything. They want to have these Instagrammable moments, things that they can put on TikTok and so forth that, makes them look like they're having a cool visit. They're doing something different from what everybody else back at home is doing. Healthy life, your rural environment provides that potential for, natural exercise, walking in nature, cycling, hiking, etc. People want to get off the beaten track. They want to do something that's not customary. Again, related to the social, they want to take home memorable stories. They want something that is out of the norm from what they would normally experience. This concept about you want to actively participate. You don't just want to look from a distance. You want to have an experience. You want to be part or be involved in that tourism experience. You want to be actively engaged. And these are some of the characteristics and the trends that are making rural tourism, the possibilities for rural tourism attractive. The concept of being somehow transformed a bit when you travel, trying something new, local food and drinks, interacting with local people, culture, and nature. But given all of this, people still want to be comfortable and they want to be safe. So we can't throw those rules out of the window when you go off the beaten track. Yes, you want to offer people something different, but still ensure their safety and that they have some level of comfort. Let me know if anyone has any questions or comments. Someone just said something was interesting. I'm not sure which of the elements. But with all that said, even when you're looking at current trends, agritourism is actually not new. It may be new to some of us, but different areas of the world have been doing it for many years. So for example, Italy in Europe is well known for wine tourism. And there is actually an organization that hosts a World Agri-Tourism Day conference. And we participated at ECO in the 16th World Agri-Tourism Day, which means that there were several prior to 2023. And in the conference booklet, there was a statement that I found that was quite poignant. It says, it's here on your slide. When the primary sector contributes, and the primary sector we refer to as the agricultural sector, contributes the least to our GDP, and the tertiary sector, which is the services sector or the tourism sector, contributes the most, why not combine the best of both to ensure inclusive growth, right? And as you would have seen from the previous slide, there is an increasing willingness of tourists to go off the beaten path and to venture to rural tourism spots. Sameness, I think visitors are getting tired of sameness, particularly younger travelers. The older generation that would have gone to the same resort year after year and drank the same watered down pina colada. The new generation of tourists want something different. And so there is a market for rural tourism if properly executed. I will just stop here briefly just to ask if, in where you are in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, if you are seeing those trends of, people willing to get out more out of the norm. I don't know if anybody can speak on behalf of what they see occurring in the tourist sector in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Anyone?
I worked in the hotel industry for quite a while, and it depends on the type of guests that you have, coming to the islands. Most of them just want to sit around and have a rum punch. The guys, we have our local rum, the strong rum, that is really, really strong, Those guys come up with different creation and making drinks with that and so forth. But basically, most of the persons that I know that came to stay at the hotel, they just wanted to relax, where you would have others come, would want to explore. But I think at the end of the day, everybody was on budget. So they didn't do that much. That is from my observation, from hotel standpoint. And like when the cruise ship coming now, a lot of folks are walking around town. You have the taxi driver, oh, we can take you here, there, we have the botanical gardens and so, but people prefer to do walking. That's my observation.
Okay, I've seen the chat. Janiel has said that there are adventure groups offering off-road excursions, kayaking, hikes, etc., and that in recent years, more persons are establishing businesses within this field. So it maybe it's something that might be slow in coming off the ground, but as more and more persons or businesses offer the opportunities to experience something outside of the hotels, I am sure you're gonna see a growth, in people wanting to not necessarily sip a rum cocktail all day, I mean, we have definitely seen that in Jamaica, for example. So it's just a matter of time before you see that trend taking root everywhere. All right, let me continue. And so when we look at the opportunities in the area of rural tourism, and we have to say, okay, fine, if we were to look at, how within our spaces, within our farming locations or rural communities, how do we make that offering. And it is more than just bringing visitors onto a farm and say, see my potato over there, right? A lot of creativity is needed to transform a farm or maybe other type of rural community location into an attraction. Visitors may not necessarily always be interested in the farm itself or the farming activity itself, but possibly the food that creates the curiosity that links to the production activities. And so you may have to work backwards from the food, or you may need to create experiences involving more than one elements that also incorporate the farm. And so I am going to show a YouTube link. That's a short video on a agritourism or a farm tourism experience in Colorado in the USA. I'm probably gonna have to stop sharing the PowerPoint presentation to switch to the YouTube. So I'm just gonna stop share for a bit. This looks more like a tool set.
If this looks more like a tool shed or a farm than a hotel.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask if you're hearing the sound. Is everyone hearing the sound a while ago?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure, so I'm starting.
If this looks more like a tool shed or a farm than a hotel, well, that's because it is. The Platte River Fort here near Greeley is an agro-tourism location. That means it's a working farm, and people can also come stay here and learn more about what farm life is like, all without losing those 5-star accommodations. Welcome to a place where the longhorn cattle often outnumber the guests.
He's super, super sweet.
Where the rooms move locations with the seasons.
This is a Conestoga wagon.
And life on the farm meets fine dining and spas.
We want people to have an understanding and some get the experience of what it's like to be on a working farm and ranch.
You could call Platte River Fort a hotel, but it's more than that.
We're somewhere between a lodge, a bed and breakfast, a small resort.
Sitting on more than 200 acres of northern Colorado farmland.
We have a lot of hiking trails.
It's best to take a side-by-side to get to your room.
We're headed down to what we call Yurt Village.
Yurt tents line the riverbank, filled with beds, pillows, chairs, and yes, wine.
You get to feel like you're camping and be in nature, have a nice fire at night, sit by the fire, and yet we kind of do everything for you.
And if a tent, even this tent, is still a little out of your comfort level, maybe a wagon is more your style.
It sleeps 4, it has a king-size bed and a set of bunk beds in it.
Platte River Fort is a working farm, but it also serves a purpose beyond what the land produces.
This creates a really unique opportunity for people to get a new perspective and see how other people that they think are different from themselves are actually a lot more alike.
The property is centered around a replica of Bent's Fort in La Junta, with rooms facing out towards the river.
This is some place to come and have an experience.
An experience that's sure to be an adventure. And you can stay in those yurts for the next couple of months. Once winter comes, they put them away until the spring, but that covered wagon has heating and air conditioning. You can stay in it year-round. In Greeley, I'm Mark.
Okay, so I will now go back to the presentation and notice the comments or the emphasis on experience, and that was one of those tourist trends that I was mentioning earlier, experience and adventure. right? That's something a lot of younger tourists they're looking to have. Just give me a second. I'm going to bring up back the presentation. Okay, and so you now have your, how do you make your farm an attraction? We just saw a farm that was able to incorporate accommodation and introduce people to understanding what happens on the farm. And so think about how you can do fun things, infuse fun into your farm tour, combine education and entertainment. I mean, there's a concept I've heard of, agri-tainment, infusing heritage and culture, and of course, combining the farm with, allied activities. So it becomes part of that adventure that we were speaking about. And then we talk about accommodation. So we spoke about, rural accommodation in Europe. So you may not necessarily have a bed and breakfast setup or a French gîte on your property, but you can improvise. You can do huts, you can do tents. You can, and you saw those, relatively fancy tents in the Colorado video that we just looked at. And there's this concept even of glamping. That's a combination of the two words glamorous and camping. So camping, yes, it can be rugged, but it's come a far way from the initial concept of what camping is about. And then you can take it at different levels. I for example mentioned huts. I once went to I don't even know what to call it, if I should call it a hotel or accommodation in Jamaica, and everything was huts. But they had different types of huts. They had the very basic huts according to your, if you have a small budget, and then they had the glamorous huts, and they had the creative huts, and they had the unique huts, and they pretty much just had a hut for every type of person or interest. So you can find different ways to do accommodation in your space that fits into the space that you have. I see that Natalie has posted a comment in the chat about Wind Blow Farm in St. Vincent. It's still a work in progress, but it is similar and it offers tours of the farm at the moment. I see Janiel has sent some Instagram links. I will probably try and check afterwards. I don't know if Daniel wants to explain what the Instagram links are about. I think this is related to the prior discussion, re-adventures and so forth. Daniel, do you want to comment on what?
Hi, so the first link is there's this young man, he usually offers different tours around that adventure kind of tourism vibe. So I just shared that so persons could see what is being offered. In addition to that, the video that was being shown, right? When I saw it, it kind of reminded me of what was being offered down in Vermont, which is the it's like the second link, which is what do you call it? It's called Bush Bar. We usually we call it Bush Bar, and it's a place where you can go. You can get your item, your local food. You can get you can do what you call that, sip and paint and stuff like that. So it's a real tropical vibe, and it's something outside of the ordinary that is usually being offered at tourism destinations. So I just thought I'd share them with the group.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing, Daniel. I like that name, Bush Bar. It makes you want to go to that place, and I think visitors are increasingly interested in these unique, out of the way, out of the ordinary types of places. So thanks very much for that contribution. And I'm going to share another video that also has quite a cutie name. The place is called Stush in the Bush, just kind of a similar take on the Bush Bar. And it's an example of our next theme, which is the culinary theme. And there's a quote here from a former UN WTO Secretary General, and it's that essentially rural areas are the origin of our food, right? And as such, that allows them to market themselves as food destinations, and they can be truly unique and appealing for travelers who want to taste the flavors and of the country and those spaces. And culinary tourism has become a big thing. A lot of people are willing to travel for food. There are a lot of these YouTubers who travel all across the world, showcasing the food, the street food, the food from these different locations that, not necessarily mainstream, what you know of what the food is typically served in restaurants and so forth. And they have very large followings, and so culinary tourism is a big thing, and it's also a big opportunity for rural locations. So I'm going to actually go to another video, which will show you an example of a farm to table attraction, which is actually in Jamaica. Before I go to that video, I just want to make some comments about some considerations when you're talking about food tourism or culinary tourism. To note, food tourists or those who travel in search of unique food experiences, they tend to have higher than average expenditure. They tend to be a little bit more well-to-do. They are demanding. They don't like sameness. And thus the culinary offering cannot be bland and anonymous. It must have personality. It must have flair. The terroir, which is French, I guess, for territory, is that differentiating factor and that source of local identity. Culinary offerings also, typically referred to as gastronomy. It allows for, tourists to take in part of your cultural heritage through tasting, experiencing, and purchasing. And then you also need to consider that, your traditional cuisine can coexist with what is new and what is innovative, right? Gastronomy is a process of continuous evolution. So you can renew and adapt offerings to the needs of the new consumer. And the destinations that seek to get into culinary tourism, they need to be able to articulate a credible and authentic narrative of their food tourism or offerings. You need to, some of what you were telling me earlier about some of the unique foods and what is used to make the foods and so forth, how you share or impart that knowledge about the food. That is very important. So I'm going to stop sharing and switch to this video.
Jamaica's beauty is curvaceous. It's curving and we're feeling all those curves. Senses are going off. We're all excited. It's powerful, passionate love. E.G. Bird. It's a really
Not seeing the video.
I'm just about to bring it up. Sorry for the delay.
A nice place to visit.
Stush in the Bush really embodies this whole thought around rustic gourmet. The philosophy in itself is that we want you to learn how to fall in love with your food. It's not just about the food. It's about the entire experience.
It's been a rainy, windy morning. Zionite's farm at Stush in the Bush. All we're gonna do is to gather today's vegetables, greens, herbs, spices, fruits.
Parsley, cilantro, oregano. I'd like to make some fresh chimichurri sauce.
Whatever's gonna be on your menu, it's harvested fresh from the farm. I always describe Jamaica as a power center. There is a powerful energy just springing out of the earth. The connection with the earth is, I don't know, it's intrinsic for me. Oh. Breadfruit is a respect, it's a love, it's an appreciation, and it's also immediately you become a protector of that same earth.
Stush in the Bush is kind of the epitome of Chris and Lisa. The bushman, the Rasta, the down-to-earth with the shishi fufu, New York, Beijing, Brooklyn girl.
Working with my wife is a powerful experience. She will work from sunrise to sunset. She will work out everybody here, including me. Sometimes I have to hide, but that energy is what makes us do what we do and do it very well. I say we are the best at what we do because we are probably the only people doing exactly what we do. An experience where you can come into someone's home or someone's farm, dine with them, learning about the medicinal plants, you're learning about all different types of food, and I can guarantee you, the food you get here, you won't get anywhere else in Jamaica. That I know for sure. Good afternoon. How you doing? Good. Blessed. People just dig a genuine experience. And for us, this is our home. And when we welcome you into our home, we welcome you like one of the family.
It's just who we are. It's what we do. It's what we put forth. Food is at the base of it. Why not have it be its very best?
Okay, guys, here we go.
And why not have it filled with pure love in it? It's a love for Jamaica, a love for the land, a love for great food, and being able to share that experience with other people. That's what you take in when you're at Stush in the Bush.
First two ingredients on all our products, love and affection. Those are the first two ingredients, but I always assume that people know that. I don't even mention it. See, just like stout. If he hears the word love and just gets excited. Okay, boy. All right, okay. Love you too. Yeah, man.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing the video and go back to the presentation. Just give me a sec. Okay, so I'm just gonna look at the chat. I see quite a few comments. Okay, well, I see someone's here say food is life, right? So I can see that you can feel that energy that they were talking about. Someone says that they would like to visit someday. I've actually never been. I've actually spoken to the couple. They actually did a session once for me as part of a rural tourism course, and they were gracious enough to kind of present on their experience. A coworker of mine actually went, I think, last weekend or the weekend before, but I haven't gotten a chance to get. And she said that she has been dying to go for the longest time. So, I probably should have gotten her take on the place before this session, but I didn't get a chance. Someone has mentioned Lobster Fest in Bequia Conch Festival Union Island. So I need someone to share these experiences with me. Someone said they're not seeing the video. I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm not sure why some persons would have seen the video and some persons would not have seen the video. I'm not certain, but I can hopefully, what I will ask is for Latoya to share the PowerPoint presentation, which has a link to the video on this slide. So for those who did not get a chance to see the video a while ago, they will be able to see the video.
Shana, that was before you shared it.
Okay. All right, not a problem. Someone else said, I can relate, it's a vibe. Not everyone feels this way. Oh yes, food porn, that's a photography around, showing exciting images of food. Lovely, food is my passion, love it. And then someone else mentioned the Madongo Fest. So while we're on the culinary slide, I would like to hear a little bit more about the Lobster Fest in Bequia. I'm not maybe saying the name properly, and the Conch Festival in Union Island, as well as the Madongo Fest. So possibly, I think who suggested these ones? Olivier, you want to tell me about the Lobster Fest and the Conch Festival?
Okay, with the Lobster Fest, what happened is that there's a weekend that is set aside every year for a lobster fest. So you have about 3 or 4 restaurants partnering. So you will have one night would be at this restaurant, the other night would be at the other one, and they all prepare just lobster dishes. So you get from your appetizer right down to your desserts, all lobster. So that has grown. And same thing for Union Island, they have the Conch Fest. So there's a particular weekend as well that I'm not sure whether they spread it out like that, but I know they meet in a particular area and all they have there is products, food that is different dishes made with the conch. And this not only the dishes, but they also do show the craft that they make from the conch shell and all that as well.
Okay. I know 1 or 2 people that if I told them that St. Vincent and Grenadines had a lobster festival, they would be there. They're always talking about lobster. It's not something that you necessarily get all the time. So just to hear of the concept of a lobster festival, that would excite a lot of people. And then there is the Madongo Fest. Joyella, you want to speak about that?
Okay, so basically with the Madongo Fest, they usually prepare different dishes using the arrowroot starch. But the main one would be the Madongo bakes with fried fish, or sometimes the Madongo bakes with blackfish or codfish. That's the main dish. Days leading up to the festival, there is usually preparations in terms of the milling of the arrowroot in order to get this starch. So persons do go by to look at the process.
Okay, interesting. I see someone, Risha, is asking what period of the year, what time of the year, what months you have the lobster and the conch festival, and when also is a Madongo festival.
Okay, so Madongo Fest, it is during the month of March mostly, and recently they did in October for Independence.
Okay, and based on the chat, I see Lobster Fest is usually late September. Okay, so mark your calendar.
We also have Bag of Fish Fest too, where they specialize in the blackfish.
Okay.
Yes, I remember the Blackfish Fest, that's true.
They try to do it at least once a month.
Once a month?
Yeah.
Oh, that's relatively frequent.
Yeah.
First Friday in every month.
Yeah, it's a Friday. They usually have like a big session where the vendors would come out, and mainly it's blackfish and different aspects of it. You get it through dry stew. You get it
Okay.
fresh, and they also do fish, but mainly it's the blackfish because
Okay.
Barley is noted for the blackfish.
Okay. All right. All right. So, these are the types of experiences that you can connect to visitors and you can expand, and they are essentially your signature products, that you can develop, even beyond the festivals, other types of experiences around. All right, so let me continue. Of course, there's also the concept of health and wellness as part of your rural tourism experience. The concept of well-being is emerging that actually connotes a connection to nature, relaxation, beauty, spiritual and mental practices within that natural landscape. And so, for example, even the products that you use in a spa, they can be grown on a farm. You're looking at your lemongrass, your mint, your cocoa butter, your coconut oil, your ginger, your honey, and I'm sure you can think of many more based on where you are. But the concepts, wellness, the rural environment is a prime environment for wellness type activities. And so you want to, also consider if you can connect with other elements, other locations, to create a route, for example, similar to what we would have seen in Latin America. So within a certain community, you can look at, look at what's around, look at how you can connect different types of experiences. So there is a multi-pronged experience, some, akin to a route. These are different ways in which a farm or other type of space in the rural environment it can be part of a broader tourism product or service. And then just some tips on developing your idea. Look for opportunities, gaps that are not being filled, how you can create something new. Again, as I was mentioned just a while ago, how can you scan your environment for tourism possibilities? Research the history, understand the heritage of your locality, understand your culture, and see what can be created based on that. It's important to take into consideration quality and customer satisfaction. Research the market, research your target market, research your clients, understand the requirements for the type of product or service that you want to offer. Consider the suitability of the surrounding environment. Sensitize your community if you want to bring visitors into your community. You can have the best product, but if the environment right around it is negative, then that detracts from what you have to offer. You also have to get guidance, create partnerships that can strengthen what you have to offer. Sometimes you might need to test the market with your idea. Of course, as always, consider safety, consider security, consider hygiene. That would be important elements of your tourism, rural tourism product. And try to become an expert in what you do. Look at online reviews, what tourists are saying about different places that they visit. Look at the competition, go on TripAdvisor and so forth. And always try and exceed your visitor expectation, right? Go a little more, try it for that wow factor. If you really want to create a standout rural tourism experience. And you see that culinary farm to table video that I showed you, Stush in the Bush. If you go on, say, TripAdvisor and those sorts of sites, and you look at the ratings, they get 4- and 5-star ratings. I've read some of the reviews, and it appears like people are having out-of-body experiences when they go there, because they set out to wow their customers, and it has paid off. Okay, so I'm actually going to share, as part of my closing, 2 rural tourism examples from the Caribbean. The first one is called PEG Farm, and it is in Barbados, and it is actually a nature reserve that describes itself as a biodynamic farm. They offer tours, farm-to-table cafe, farm shop, camping, and workshops on some of the property's biodynamic practices. So these practices are centered around the farm's ethos of health and wellness. And PEG is an acronym for People, Environment, and Growth, PEG. The farm features free-range livestock, cattle, pigs, chicken. So they have an environmentally sustainable approach to farming. They have a medicinal herb garden, fruit orchard, their other food production, and a forested area. The tour of the farm and the nature reserve, they teaches visitors on the property's biodynamic and permaculture principles, which advocate for what is known as restorative agricultural practices, which is essentially agricultural practices that do not harm the environment and have improved environmental outcomes. And so visitors can also enjoy the tranquil setting and the stunning views of the coastline from the hilltop retreat. The farm's produce is also similar farm-to-table dining. The farm's produce become the ingredients for the PEG's farm-to-table restaurant, which is called Chrysalis Cafe. And they serve innovative and nutritious dishes using fresh, locally grown food. So this is an example of, a rural tourism location in Barbados. I'm going to now move to Belmont Estate in Grenada. And this is one of the premier tourism attractions in Grenada. And they offer visitors an opportunity to learn about rural Grenadian life through tours of its organic farm, cocoa processing facilities, heritage museum, and gardens, and Grenadian restaurants. The estate dates back to the 1600s, producing coffee, nutmeg, sugar, and cocoa. Due to the challenges, they sought to diversify operations and thus opened the tourism component as far back as 2002. But this business was disrupted by hurricanes in 2004 and 2005, and they had to refurbish the facilities. Currently, as you see in this picture, cocoa is a chief product, complemented by a variety of spices and the rearing of livestock. They have a chocolate factory that produces single source organic, dark, and milk chocolates. They have a heritage museum, gardens, goat dairy producing goat cheese. They have a 250-seater Creole restaurant serving local foods, and they have a chocolate bonbon shop and gift shop. And so they offer tours of the cocoa to chocolate process, tours of their chocolate gardens and the farms. Belmont Estate actually employs 80 to 100 workers, so it is a fairly big enterprise. And they receive approximately 25,000 visitors per year. The company has been recognized regionally and internationally as best practice in agritourism and has played a pivotal role in Grenada's tourism industry. The estate has been able to create a union of tourism, food production, and the environment. And they recognize that this linkage is driven by the visitors' interest in good food, which is connected to good farming practices, and ultimately a great holiday experience. And so that is where we will close today's session. And so I hope it has been beneficial, and I open up for questions and comments. Anybody wants to kickstart any questions? Any thoughts?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, I am concerned about the agri-tourism. If you have like a farm and you have to bring strangers, visitors onto your farm to see your practices, I am concerned about the safety and the health aspect and the different bacteria and viruses that it can bring onto your farm.
Okay, that's a very good point. And the concept of biosafety when you're talking about farm practices. And I am not certain necessarily how those who do it, how they manage that issue. Just thinking off the top of my head, I think you would have to have certain parts of the farm that you allow visitors to go, and that is managed accordingly. And then there are certain parts of the farm that visitors are not allowed to go to ensure that biosafety issue. So I do think that's an important consideration, and I'm sure there are ways to manage that risk. Someone says this is agri-tourism. That's interesting. It's a good point, but it's a risk that has to be managed. Any other, Anastasia, does that answer your point? Or you, I mean, I know you still have concern, but it's something that has to be worked into the plan as to how you isolate that risk from, say, the main sections of your farm.
Yes, it's something to really think about when you're thinking about agritourism. Even if you are producing stuff as well, you have to really be mindful of what level of exposure you would want your facility to have.
Agreed. Risha, your hand is up.
Hi, yeah, I don't know if you had mentioned it earlier in your presentation, but I was just wondering, and I know indeed it will vary, if any sort of study was done looking at what persons in the Caribbean are looking for as part of their, vacation experience, tourism experience.
I'm not certain. I would have to do some further checks. I don't know if, for example, the Caribbean Tourism Organization, that's a CTO, if that is data that they collect. I remember a former colleague, she, a lot of the information that I know about agritourism I actually learned from her. Her name is Ina Harvey, and she resides in Barbados. And I remember once she made a point that she did not think that tourism authorities were asking the right question to get that type of information on, what people want to do and what their interests are. And I think so I don't know if the types of questions that they might poll tourists on, I'm not certain if we're getting that level of data, or if it is, how is it being analyzed and who has access. It's quite likely that it's somewhere it's being collected. I'm not sure who has it.
Okay.
Someone has just asked, do you know of any funding sources to access assistance to further advance rural tourism in the Caribbean? It's something that we are looking into at ECA to see what are some of the possibilities. I know there are one or two funding entities. I know, for example, I think IFAD has funded some rural tourism activities in Guyana. I know, I'm not certain if there's anyone else that is looking at funding for those experiences in the Caribbean, but it's something that we're trying to get a sense of, who is interested in terms of the donors in contributing or assisting in this area. Any other comments or questions? Is there anyone who would have an interest in going into this area? Yes, I see someone said yes, Joylyn. And I hope that there are others. We recently did a more extensive course on rural tourism across the Caribbean as well. And, it was interesting to find out the varying things that people, were willing to try. There's a lot of creativity in the Caribbean. It's just to get boots on the ground to get these things done. But it's, as I said, and it is important to show you these examples, and there are many others, by the way. I've just picked out two, because to show you that what we are talking about is being executed in reality. You're not just talking about something hypothetical, right? People are executing it in different ways according to what they have, their knowledge, their skill sets, and so forth. So it's not far-fetched. It's just that we want to promote it more to become mainstream, not just a one-off type of activity. Okay, someone asked when will it, well, it's going to be offered again sometime in early 2024. So we would definitely, for example, through Helen's Daughters, try to promote the course and to disseminate the information on that course. Yes, so a lot of the people are doing elements of it, but maybe not necessarily calling it rural tourism for what it really is. All right. Well, if there are no other comments or questions, I will close. Latoya, I can hand over back to you to wrap up the session. And I also want to let you know that if you are interested in gaining more information, you can, through Helen's Daughter, request my contact information, my email address or phone number. I am very willing to provide assistance after these sorts of sessions, and several persons in other contexts have reached out to me, and I do follow up and contact them. Latoya, I'm handing back over to you.
I thank you very much. And thank you so much for the information you shared, as well as the different videos to start to give some ideas to the participants as to what's currently happening in the Caribbean and how they can contribute to agri-tourism. Ladies, like Ms. Brandon said, please feel free to utilize her as a resource individual. You can send her emails if you have any questions, anything you want clarity on. Please don't hesitate to contact her. Sometimes it's the smallest ideas turn into some of the largest investment, and some of them, as large as they are today, they started with something simple. Okay, so please utilize her, ask any questions that you might want to ask, or email, etc. And I know for sure she will get back to you. Thank you again for so much information. I mean, I must say, to all these sessions for Helens Daughters, this is so intriguing. And every time I do these sessions, even though some of them are repeat for me, I always find them so interesting. So I could only imagine how the ladies are currently feeling. So I really want to thank you for joining us tonight and doing such an excellent job and presenting on agri-tourism.